Uh, Good morning to all. So today we are going to start our new chapter. So impact of wastewater discharge to the water bodies. Okay. The present chapter covers a basic aspect of the water quality and water pollution, analyzing in more detail three important topics related to discharge of sewage to receiving water bodies. First is a pollution by organic matter. Second is a contamination by pathogenic microorganism, and the third is a pollution of lake and the reservoir. Okay, so there are the three types of the major important topics which are related to the discharge of the sewage to receiving the water body. So first is a pollution by organic matter. So this is in this kind there is a dissolved oxygen consumption. Second is a contamination by pathogenic microorganisms, so the bacterial die-off, and the third is a pollution of lakes and the reservoir. So the eutrophication caused by the nitrogen and the phosphorus. In each of these main items, cause of effects, control, and modeling of the pollution are discussed. Later in this chapter, water quality legislation is discussed, introducing the concept of discharge standard and quality standard for the water body. The importance of the chapter is related to the planning of the removal, efficiency, and effluent quality to be achieved in the wastewater treatment plant. So the pollution by the organic matter and the stream sand purification. The present section covers one of the main problem of water pollution, largely solved in the most developed region, but still of a great importance in developing regions. That is the consumption of the dissolved oxygen after sewage discharge. The introduction of organic matter into a water body results indirectly in the consumption of dissolved oxygen. This occurs as a result of the process of the stabilization of the organic matter undertaken by the bacteria, which uses the oxygen available in the liquid medium for their respirators. As expected, the decrease in the dissolved oxygen concentration in the water body has a various implication from the environmental point of view. The objective of this section is to study of the processes of consumption of the dissolved oxygen and of the stream cell purification, in which the water body recovered itself through purely natural mechanism. Both of these processes are analyzed from an ecological viewpoint and subsequently more specifically through the mathematical representation of the DO profile in the water body, dissolved oxygen profile in the water body. In broader terms, the process of the cell purification is associated with the re-establishment of the equilibrium of the aquatic ecosystem after the alteration induced by the effluent discharge. Within a more specific point of view, the conversion of an organic compound into inert compounds, not deleterious from an ecological viewpoint, is an integral part of the process. It should be understood that the concept of the self purification present the same relativity as the concept of the pollution. Water can be considered purified from one point of view, even if not fully purified in the hygienic term, presenting, for instance, pathogenic organism. From a pragmatic approach, water could be considered purified when its characteristics are not conflicting anymore with the intended use in each reach of the water course. This is because there is no absolute purification. The ecosystem reach a new equilibrium, but under conditions that are different from the before, owing to the increase in the concentration of the certain compounds and byproducts resulting from the decomposition process. As consequences, the aquatic community is different, even if at a new equilibrium state. The knowledge and the quantification of the self purification phenomena is very important because of the following objective. First, the use of capacity of the river from a strictly ecological point of view. It could be argued that the ecosystem should remain unaltered. However, from a pragmatic perspective, it can be considered that the capacity of water body to assimilate discharge without presenting environmental problems is a natural resource that can be exploited. So, the ecosystem should remain unaltered. Right? So it is a characterize that, or it is a general phenomena that all the natural ecosystem or natural water bodies remain unaltered, but due to the pragmatic conditions, okay, so due to the rapid industrializations, there are the certain kind of the pollutants are mixed and thrown in the natural ecosystem in the river, so that so it can be considered that the capacity of a water body to assimilate discharge without presenting environmental problems is a natural resource that can be exploited. This realistic vision of a great importance is developing countries where the lack of the financial resource justifies the use of water sources to complement up to a certain point. The processes that occurs in the sewage treatment is done with the prismony and with a well-defined and the safe technical criteria. So first is that we use the assimilation capacity of the river. Okay, so the capacity of river is generally defined as the type of the water and the uh, dissolved solid and dissolved oxygen content is available in that particular water. So with the help of that, we can use the capacity of the river first to avoid effluent discharge about the assimilating capacity of the water body. So what is the assimilating capacity of the water body? So assimilating capacity is defined as when we mix any just take an example that that we have a jar of water and in the periodic time we will added a spoon of salt in a frequent manner. So after some times the salt is not dissolved in that particular water. So we can say that the water is at a saturation capacity. So the it is a general or a similar terms of estimated capacity of the water body that the pathogenic bacteria and the pollutants which are mixed or which are thrown into the river. So the water are consumed and dissolved in that particular pollutants in that. But after a saturation point, the or increasing the amount of the pollutants, there are a number of the pollutants which are increasing in the water bodies, and the estimated capacity of the water is reached at the saturation point. Or after that, the the water is said to be called the polluted water. So in this way, the estimated capacity of the water body can be used up to a level that is acceptable and not detrimental. Below this level, no further discharge would be allowed. So to avoid effluent discharge above the assimilative capacity of the water body. In this way, the assimilative capacity of the water body can be used up to a level that is acceptable and non-detrimental. Beyond this level, no further discharge would be allowed. Ecological aspect of the stream cell purification. The ecosystem of the water body upstream of the discharge of untreated wastewater is usually in a state of equilibrium. Downstream of a discharge, the equilibrium between the communities is affected, resulting in an initial disorganization followed by the subsequent tendency toward the rearrangement. In this sense, cell purification can be understood as a phenomenon of an ecological succession along the river that is the systematic equality of the replacement of a community by another until a stable community is established. The equilibrium is a total condition. The presence or absence of the pollution can be characterized by the concept of the species diversity. So the ecosystem is a nature and research. So ecosystem in the natural condition, there are the two types of the ecosystem, the high number of species and low number of individual in each species, and the ecosystem under disturbance, low number of species and a high number of individual in each species. A reduction in the diversity of the species is due to the fact that the population is selective for the species. Only those that adapt to the new environmental conditions survive, and further, proliferate the other species do not resist to the new environmental condition and vanish because self-purification is a process that develops with time and considering the dimension of the universe and the three originally longitudinal stage of the ecological fluctuation. can be associated with a physically identified zone in the river, which have the same reason fluvial zone. So there are the four main zones. First is the degradation zone, second is the active decomposition zone, third is the recovery zone, and the fourth is the clean water zone. These zones occur downstream of the discharge of a predominantly biodegradable organic wastewater. It should be remembered that upstream of the discharge there is a clean water zone characterized by the ecological equilibrium and good water quality. Figure presents the trajectory along the four zones of the three main water quality parameters. First is the organic matter, second is the heterotrophic bacteria, and the last is the dissolved oxygen. So the degradation zone is a general characteristic. This zone starts soon after the discharge of wastewater to the water body. The main chemical characteristic is the high concentration of organic matter, still in a complex stage but potentially decomposable. Aesthetic aspect as the discharge point, water is turbid due to the solid present in the sewage. The sedimentation of the solid results in the formation of the sludge bank, organic matter, and the dissolved oxygen. In this zone, there is a complete disorder compared to the stable community that exists before. Decomposition of the organic matter carried out by the microorganism can have a slow start depending on the adaptation of the microorganism to the waste. Normally, in the case of the predominantly organic wastewater, the microorganisms present in the wastewater itself are those responsible for the start of the decomposition. Because the decomposition can still be incipient, the oxygen consumption for the respiratory activities of the microorganism can also be low, allowing sufficient dissolved oxygen for the fish. After the adaptation of the microorganism, the consumption rate of the organic matter becomes high, also implying a high rate of the dissolved oxygen consumption. Microorganism after the adaptation period, bacteria start to proliferate with a massive predominance of the aerobic form, that is those that depends on the oxygen available in the medium of their metabolic processes. Bacteria having an evidence of food in the form of their organic matter introduced by the wastewater and also with the sufficient oxygen for their respiration have an excellent condition for development and reproduction. The quantity of organic matter is at a maximum at the discharge point, and due to the consumption by the microorganisms start to decrease. Decomposition by the products. This is an increase in the level of carbon dioxide, one of the products of the microbial receptory process, with the increase in the CO2 concentration, which is then converted into the carbonic acid in water. Water may become more acidic and pH may decrease. Bottom sludge. Anaerobic conditions start to prevail in the sludge at the bottom due to the difficulty in the gas exchange with the atmosphere. As a consequence, there is a production of hydrogen sulfide, which is a potential generator of unpleasant smell. Nitrogen. Complex nitrogen compounds are still present in the high levels, although the large part undergoes conversion to the ammonia. Aquatic community. There is a substantial reduction in the number of living species. Altogether, the number of individuals in each one is extremely high, characteristic a disturbed ecosystem. Less adequate forms disappear while resistant and better adaptation form prevail. The quantity of coliform bacteria is very high. When the discharge is associated with the domestic sewage, also occurring are protozoans that feed on the bacteria. Besides fungi that feed on the organic matter, the presence of the algae is rare because of the difficulty in the life filtration owing to the turbidity of water and invention of the hydras, sponges, crustaceans, molecules, and the fish take place. So next is the active decomposition zone. So the general characteristic after the initial disturbance, the ecosystem begins to organize itself. Microorganisms present in the large number actively decompose organic matter. The impact reaches the highest level of water quality is at its worst state. Aesthetic aspect, the strongest water coloration can still be observed. together with the dark deposits of the sludge at the bottom, organic matter and the dissolved oxygen. In this zone, the dissolved oxygen reached to its lowest concentration depending on the magnitude of the discharge. Dissolved oxygen may be completely consumed by the microorganisms. In this situation, anaerobic conditions occur and in all the liquid bulk, aerobic likely disappear. You will create with a predominantly anaerobic microorganism. Microorganisms, bacteria begin to reduce in number, mainly due to the reduction in the available food, which has been largely stabilized. Other factors still interact in the decrease of the bacteria, such as a light fluctuation, absorption, and sedimentation. Decomposition byproduct. In the event of anaerobic reaction like taking place, byproducts are besides carbon dioxide and water, methane, hydrogen sulfide, mercuries and other, many of the responsible for the generation of the order. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is still present in the organic form, although the larger part is already in the form of ammonia. At the end of each end of the zone, in the presence of the dissolved oxygen, oxidation of ammonia to nitrate may start. Aquatic community. The number of enteric bacteria pathogenic are not decreased rapidly. This is due to the fact that the bacteria well adapted to the environmental condition in the human intestinal tract do not resist to the new environmental condition which are adverse to their survival. The number of protozoans increases, leading to the rising to a new level in the food pyramid. In the ecological succession process, the presence of the some microorganism occurs along with the insect larvae adapted to survive under the prevailing conditions. However, the macrofauna is still restricted in the species. Hydra, sponges, crystalline molecules, and the fish have not yet returned. The third is a recovered zone. After the intense phase of the organic matter consumption and the degradation of the aquatic environment, the recovery stage commences. Aesthetic aspect. Water is clearer and its general appearance is improved. Sludge deposition at the bottom present a less fine and more granular texture. There is a no release of gas or bad smell. Organic matter and the dissolved oxygen. Organic matter intensely consumed in the previous zone is largely stabilized and transformed into the inner compound. This implies a lower rate of oxygen consumption through the bacterial respiration. In parallel with this, atmospheric oxygen is introduced into the liquid mass, increasing the level of dissolved oxygen. The anaerobic condition that eventually occurred in the previous zones are not present anymore, resulting in another change in the aquatic fauna and flora. Nitrogen. Ammonia is converted into the nitrate and the nitrite to nitrate. Also, the phosphorus compounds are transformed into the phosphates. A fertilization of the medium take place because of the presence of the nitrates and the phosphate, which are nutrients for the algae. Again, due to the presence of the nutrients and the high transparency of the water, there are a condition for the development of algae. With them, there is there are the condition for the development of algae. With them, there is a production of oxygen by photosynthesis, increasing the level of dissolved oxygen in the medium. Also, a result of the presence of algae, the web become more diversified. Aquatic community, the number of bacteria is now small, and a result so is the number of protozoan bacteriophages. Algae are under full development. The first one to appear, the blue algae on the surface and the banks, followed by the Pelicans, green algae, and the finally detones. Microcustoms occur in the maximum number. Molecules, various worms, dinoflagellants, sponges, and insects are present in the high number. The food chain is more diversified. The main food for the first unit, the last is the clean water zone, general access. Water is clean again. Conditions are similar to those upstream of the discharge at least in respect to the dissolved oxygen, organic matter, and the bacteria level, and probably pathogenic organism. Aesthetic aspect. The appearance of the water is similar to that before the pollution occur. Organic matter and the dissolved oxygen. In the liquid, there is a predominance of the completely oxidized and stable form of inorganic matter. Although sludge at the bottom may not be necessarily stabilized, the concentration of dissolved oxygen is close to the saturation level, owing to the low consumption by the microbial population and the possibly high production by the algae. Aquatic community, because of the mineralization that occurred in the previous zone, water is now richer in nutrients and that before the pollution. Therefore, the production is algae is higher. There is a re-establishment of the normal food web. Various organisms, including the large freshwater crustal molecules and the fishes, are present. Its species diversity is high. The ecosystem is now stable and the community reaches its climax again. Dissolved oxygen balance. Interacting factors in the dissolved oxygen balance. In ecological terms, the most negative impact of the pollution in a water body caused by the organic matter is a decrease in the level of the dissolved oxygen caused by the respiratory of the microorganisms involved in the purification of the sewage. The impact is extended to the all aquatic community and each reduction in the level of the dissolved oxygen is selective for the certain species. So self purification zone. So the wastewater water courses, the organic matter is high and the decomposing of the bacteria. So when the organic matter is high, so the dissolved oxygen is the least in the water bodies. So it is hard for the other aquatic community for the respiratory living or respiratory works. So the first is a clean water, second is a degradation, the third is active decomposition. So in the active decomposition phase, the dissolved oxygen is the least, and after in the recovery phase, the dissolved oxygen or the level of the dissolved oxygen is increasing in a much higher stage. Dissolved oxygen has been traditionally used for the determination of the degree of pollution and the self-purification in water body. Its measurement is simple and its level can be expressed in the quantifiable concentration, allowing mathematical modeling. Water is environment poor of oxygen by virtue of its low solubility, while in the air its concentration in the order of 270 mg per liter in water at a normal condition of temperature and the pressure. Its concentration is reduced approximately to only 9 mg per liter. In this way, any large consumption brings substantial impact in the dissolved level in the liquid mass. Interacting mechanism in the DO balance. So the atmospheric radiation soluble and the final particulate DOD. In the self-purification process, there is a balance between the source of the consumption and sources of the production of oxygen. When the consumption rate is higher than the production rate, the oxygen concentration tend to decrease. The opposite occurring when the consumption rate is lower than the production rate. The main interacting mechanism in the DO balance in the water body can be found in the figure. In general, the concentration of the constitution in a water body change as a result of the physical process of advection and the depression and the biochemical and the physical process of the conversion. The process take place in the three dimensional of the water body, although in the river, the longitudinal axis is the prevailing one. So the change of concentration with the time, advection, depression, and the conversion. So advection, the transport of the constitute in the velocity field of the fluid medium. Depression, turbulence, and the diffusion spread particles of the constitute, and the conversion, biological, chemical, and the physical reaction. Oxygen consumption, oxidation of the organic matter. The organic matter in the sewage is present in two forms, suspended and the dissolved. The stable suspended solid tend to settle in the water body, forming a sludge layer at the bottom. The dissolved matter together with the suspended solid of the small dimension remains in the liquid mass. The oxidation of the later fraction of organic matter correspond to the main factor in the oxygen consumption. The consumption of DO is due to the respiration of the microorganism responsible for the oxidation, principally aerobic heterophyte bacteria. The simplified equation for the stabilization of the organic material is organic matter plus O2 plus bacteria. So CO2 plus H2O plus bacteria plus energy. Bacteria in the presence of oxygen convert the organic matter to simple and inert compound such as the water and the carbon dioxide. As a result, bacteria tend to grow and reproduce, generating more bacteria while there is availability of food and oxygen in the medium. Beneath demand, the settled organic matter in suspension which form the bottom sludge layer also need to be stabilized. A large part of the conversion is completed under anaerobic condition. Because of the difficulty of oxygen to penetrate the sludge layer, this form of conversion being anaerobic implies the non-consumption of oxygen. However, the upper part of the sludge layer, in the order to some millimeter of thickness, still has access to oxygen from a supernatant water. The sludge stabilization is completed under aerobic condition in the fine layer, resulting in the consumption of oxygen. Besides, some partial byproducts of the anaerobic decomposition may dissolve, cross the aerobic sludge layer, and diffuse itself into the bulk of the liquid, exceeding an oxygen demand. The oxygen demand originates from these combined factors associated with the sludge is called the benefic demand. Another factor that can cause oxygen demand in the reintroduction of the previously settled organic matter into the bulk of the liquid caused by the resuspension of the sludge layer. This resuspension occurs in the occasion of high flow at the velocity in the water course. The sludge not yet completely stabilized represent a new source of oxygen demand. The importance of the benefic demand and the resuspension of the sludge in the dissolved oxygen balance depends on a series of simultaneously interacting factors, many of them difficult to quantify. Nitrification. Another oxidation process is one associated with the conversion of ammonia into nitrate and in this nitrate into nitrite into the nitrate is a process called the nitrification. So the equation of the nitrification, ammonia plus O2, so nitrate plus H plus H2O plus energy. Oxygen production. So the first is the atmospheric re-aeration. Atmospheric re-aeration is frequently the main factor responsible for the introduction of the oxygen into the liquid medium. Gas transfer is a physical phenomenon through which gas molecules are exchanged between the liquid and the gas at their interface. This exchange results in an increase in the concentration into the liquid phase. If this phase is not saturated with gas, this is what happens in the water body, in which the DO concentration is reduced due to the process of the stabilization of the organic matter. As a consequence, DO levels are lower than the saturation concentration, which is given by the solubility of the gas at a given temperature and pressure. In this situation, there is an oxygen deficit. If there is a deficit, there is a search for the new equilibrium, thus allowing a larger absorption by the liquid mass. The transfer of oxygen from the gas phase to the liquid phase occurs basically through the following two mechanisms. First is a molecular diffusion, and the second is a tabular diffusion. In a quickest water body, molecular diffusion prevails. The diffusion may be described as a tendency of any substance to uniformly spread itself about all the available spaces. However, this mechanism is very slow and requires a long time for the gas to reach the deepest layer of the water body. The mechanism of the turbulent diffusion is much more efficient because it involves the main factor of effective aeration, creation of interfaces and renewal of the interfaces. The first one is important because it is through the interface that the gas exchange occurs. The second one is also significant because the fast renewal of the interface permit that localized saturation points are not formed. Besides conducting the dissolved gas to the various depths of the liquid mass as a result of mixing, the diffusion condition to the prevail is a function of the hydrodynamic characteristic of the water body. A shallow river with a rapid present excellent condition for an efficient turbulent. In this condition, molecular diffusion is negligible. On the other hand, in lakes, molecular diffusion take the predominant values. Unless wind promotes good mixing and interface renewal. The next is a photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the main process used by the autotrophic organism to synthesize organic matter, being a characterized of the organism containing the deep chlorophyll, containing chlorophyll. The process takes place only in the presence of the light energy according to the following simplified equation: CO2 plus H2O plus light energy is in the organic matter plus O2. So the photosynthesis reaction is exactly opposite to the reciprocation reaction. While the photosynthesis is in a process of fixing light energy and forming glucose molecules of a high energy potential, reciprocation is essentially the opposite backstage release of this energy for the subsequent nucleation of metabolic changes. Light dependence controls the distribution of a photosynthesis organelle to location to where the light is flowing. In water, is a certain condition such as from soil particles and the suspended solid from wind research, the possibility of the pressure of oil is smaller and the result. So is the photosynthetic activity. This states the first cell purification zone where the predominant is almost exclusively for nuclear organisms. In this zone, reciprocation structure might production. To this particular real water quality parameters measured by the some component of that currently available. The next topic is a water quality model. More complete water quality model. The river quantity models. River quality models have been used since the development of the classic model of DO and BOD, the Streeter and Phillips. This model represents a milestone in the water and environmental engineering. Subsequently, various other models were developed, including the model of CAM, increasing the level of complexity and the number of state and input variables, but at the same time maintaining the same conceptual structure of the classic Streeter Phelps model, a widely known model within the relatively recent generation of the model. So in the present text, for the sake of simplicity, only two main components in the DO balance are covered. So oxygen consumption, oxidation of organic matter, and the oxygen production, atmospheric re-aeration. Okay, so આ બે જ model આપણે અંદર આમાં use કરીએ છીએ. The dissolved oxygen profile. It is interesting to analyze the variation in the dissolved concentration along the water courses in the graph, which plot the so-called DO profile or DO set curve. In this graph, the vertical axis is the DO concentration and the horizontal axis is the distance of a traveling time, along which the biochemical transformation took place. From the graph, the following elements can be obtained. Identification of the consequences of the discharge, connection of the pollution with the cell purification zone, relative importance of the consumption and production of oxygen, critical point of the lowest DO concentration, comparison between the critical DO concentration and the minimum allowable concentration according with the legislation, location where the water course return to the desired condition. This modeling of these items depends essentially on the understanding of the two main interacting mechanisms in the DO balance, deoxygenation and the atmospheric reaction, radiation. This topic covered in the following subsection. So the first is the kinetics of the deoxygenation. So this particular graph shows the organic matter remaining purely at accumulated oxygen consumption excited DOD. In the biochemical oxygen demand, uh, to standardize the result, the concept of the standard DOD is frequently used, being expressed by the DOD 20.5. However, the oxygen consumption to the sample varies with the time, that is, the DOD value is different each day. The objective of the present section is to mathematically analyze the progress of oxygen consumption with the time. The concept of the BOD represent both organic matter concentration and the oxygen consumption can be understood by the following two distinct angles, both having a unit mass of oxygen per unit volume. Remaining BOD concentration of the organic matter remaining in the liquid mass at a given time. Exerted BOD, cumulative oxygen consumption for the stabilization of the organic matter. The two curves are systematically like mirror image at the time zero. The organic matter is present in its total concentration while the oxygen consumed is zero. With the passing of time, the remaining organic matter reduces, implying an increase in the accumulated oxygen consumption. After a period of the several days, the organic matter has been practically all stabilized, while the oxygen consumption has been practically all excessive. The understanding of this phenomena is important because both curves are an integral part of the BO model. Temperature has a great influence on the microbial metabolism, affecting as a result the stabilization rate of organic matter. The empirical relation between the temperature and the deoxygenation coefficient can be expressed in the following form. K1T is equal to K120 theta T raised to T minus 20. સો આ બધા જે કાઇનેટિક રેડિયેશન છે બરાબર એ આપણે તમારે એટલું બધું ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ નથી રિએક્શન ઓફ ધ કોએફિશિયન્ટ ઓફ K2. Input data for DA modeling. Okay. So the next topic is the dissolved oxygen in the wastewater. In sewage, the dissolved oxygen levels are normally nil or close to the zero. This is due to the large quantity of organic matter present, implying a high consumption of oxygen by the microorganism. Therefore, the DU of raw sewage is usually adapted as zero in the calculation. બરાબર તમારું જે વેસ્ટ વોટર છે એમાં જે ડિઝોલ્વ ઓક્સિજનનું લેવલ છે સો ઇન ધ વેસ્ટ વોટર ધ ડિઝોલ્વ ઓક્સિજન લેવલ ઇઝ નિયરલી ટુ અ ઝીરો because due to the there is a high number of microorganisms which are available in the sludge or the wastewater sludge. So due to the high amount of the microorganism, there is a a lot more aeration processes are going to take place, so that due to that the amount of the dissolved oxygen in the wastewater is nearly a zero. In case that the wastewater is treated, the following consideration could be made. The first is a primary treatment. Primary effluents can be assumed as having DO equal to zero. Anaerobic treatment. Anaerobic effluent also have a DO equal to zero. Activated sludge and biofilm reactor. Effluent from this system undergoes a certain aeration at the effluent layer on the secondary sedimentation tank, enabling DO to increase to 2 mg per liter or slightly more. If the discharge outflow is long, the oxygen could be consumed as a result of the remaining DOD from the treatment. Fluctuative or malnutrition form. Effluent from the fluctuative or malnutrition ion high due to the production of the pure oxygen by the algae. At night, the DO level decreases for the purpose of the calculation. DOW values around. At the night, the DO level decreases for the purpose of the calculation. DOW values around 4 to 6 mg per liter can be adequate. Effluent subjected to the final re-aeration. Treatment plant effluent may be subjected to the final re-aeration stage in order to increase the level of dissolved oxygen. A simple system is composed by the cascade aeration made up of a sequence of steps in which there is a free fall of the liquid. DO values may raise a few milligrams per liter depending on the number of height of the step. Sufficient head must be available for the free fall. Gravity radiation should not be used directly for the anaerobic effluents due to the release of the H2S in the gas transfer operation. Section present the methodology for calculating the increase in the DO. DOD in the river and upstream of the system. So this is not a travel time, increasing concentration. So the next topic is a eutrophication of lakes and the reservoir. The eutrophication process. Eutrophication is the excessive growth of aquatic plants, either a plankton attached or rooted. So the next topic is a eutrophication of lake and the reservoir. So the eutrophication is an excessive growth of aquatic plants, either plankton and attached or nutrient at such level as to cause interference with the desired use of the water body. As discussed in this chapter, the main stimulating factor is an excessive level of nutrients in the water body, principally nitrogen and phosphorus. The water bodies under consideration are lake and the reservoir. The process of eutrophication can also occur in the river, though this is a less frequent, owing to the environmental condition being less favorable for the growth of the algae and other plants because of the factors such as the turbidity and the high velocity. So the eutrophication phenomena are not available generally in the river, and when the steady water are available, just example as a lake, so there are the high chances of the eutrophication phenomena. The following description illustrates the possible sequences of the eutrophication process in the water body, such as a lake or a reservoir. The level of eutrophication is usually associated with the predominant land use and occupation in the catchment area. So this particular figure shows that the eutrophication process and then stages of the eutrophications. So land use for the agriculture increasing in the nutrient load, urban occupation by woods and the forest. As a lake situated in the catchment area occupied by wood and the forest usually present a low productivity. That is to say, there is a little biological activity of the production in it. Given this natural condition and in the absence of the human interference, the lakes tend to accumulate solid that settle, which form a layer of sludge at the bottom. With the decomposition of the settled material, there is a certain increase still in this incipient of the level of nutrients in the liquid mass. As a result, there is a progressive increase in the population of aquatic plant and in the consequences of the other organisms situated at a high level in the food chain. In the catchment area, the larger part of the nutrients is retained with the nearly closed cycle. The plants die and in the soil are decomposed, releasing nutrients. In the region of wood and forest, the infiltration capacity of the rainwater into the soil is high. The nutrient then percolate into the soil where they are absorbed by the roots of the plant, making part again of their composition and closing the cycle. The input of the nutrients to the water body is small. The water body is still present in the low trophic level. Agriculture occupation. The removal of the natural vegetation from the catchment area for agriculture use generally leads to the intermediate stage in the deterioration process of the water body. The crops planted in the basin are harvested and transported from the human consumption, probably outside the catchment area. With this, there is a removal of nutrients that is not naturally compensated, causing a break in the interval cycle. To compensate this removal and to make the agriculture more intensive, fertilizer containing high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus are added artificially. The farmers aim at guaranteeing a high production and thus added high quantities of N and P, frequently greater than the estimated capacity of the plant. The substitution of the wood by plants for agricultural purpose can also cause a reduction in the infiltration capacity of the soil. Therefore, the nutrients already added in excess are less retained and runoff of the soil until they eventually reach a lake or a reservoir. The increase in the nutrient level, the increase in the nutrient level in the water body, for the starting increase in the number of algae and in consequence of the other organisms located at the higher levels in the food chain. cumulative with the fish. This relative increase in the productivity of the water body can even be welcome depending on its intended use, as would be the case. For instance, in aquaculture, the balance between the positive and negative aspects will depend to large extent of the nutrient estimated capacity of the water body. The third is the urban occupation. Even agriculture or forest area in catchment area is substituted by urban occupation. The series of consequences should be taken place. This time at a fast rate. The first limitation, the implementation of housing development implies land movement for the world. Urbanization also reduces the water introduction capacity into the soil. The soil particles tend to be transferred to a lower part of the catchment area until they reach the lake or a reservoir. In this water bodies, they tend to settle owing to the low horizontal velocity and the turbulence. The sediments of the soil particle causes silting and reduce the net volume of the water body. The settled material also serves as a support medium for the growth of rooted plants of a larger dimension near the shores. In spite of some ecological advantages, this plant cause an evident deterioration in the visual aspect of the water body. Urban stormwater drainage. Urban drainage transport a far greater load of nutrients in comparison with the other type of occupation of the catchment area. This nutrient import contribute to a rise in the level of algae in the reservoir. Sewage. The greatest deterioration factor, however, is associated with the wastewater originating from urban activity. The wastewater contains nitrogen, phosphorus presents in the feces and the urine, food remains, detergents, and other byproducts of the human activity. The N and P contribution from the sewage is much higher than the contribution originating from the urban drainage. Therefore, there is a great increase in the input of N and P onto the lake or the reservoir, bringing as a result of elevation in the population of algae and other plants, depending on the assimilative capacity of the water body. The algae population can reach a very high values, bringing out a series of problems which are described in the subsequent items. In a period with the high sunshine, the algae can reach a superpopulation and be present at a massive concentration at the surface layer. This surface hinders the penetration of the light energy for the lower layers in the water body, causing the death of the algae situated in this region. The death of this algae bacteria brings itself a series of other problems. The events of the superpopulation of algae are called the algae blooms. The next topic is a problem of the eutrophication. So there are the different kind of the problems which are occurred due to the eutrophication in the lake or the reservoir. The following are the main undesired effect of eutrophication. The first is a recreation and aesthetic problem. The reduction of the use of water for recreation, parking as a general tourist attraction of the because of that, frequent algae blooms, excessive vegetation growth, disturbance with the mosquito and insect, occasional bad odors, and occasional fish mortality, and aerobic condition in the bottom of the water body. The increase in the increase in productivity of the water body cause a rise in the concentration of hydrophobic bacteria, which feed on the organic matter from algae and other dead microorganisms, consuming dissolved oxygen from the liquid medium. In the bottom of the water body, there are predominantly anaerobic condition owing to the sediments of the organic matter and the small penetration of the oxygen together with the absence of the photosynthesis. With the anaerobics and anaerobic a reducing condition prevail, leading to the compounds and elements being present in the reduced state. Iron and manganese are found in the soluble form, which may bring problems with the water supply. Phosphate is also found in the soluble form and may represent an internal source of the phosphorus of algae. Hydrogen sulfide may also cause problems of toxicity and bad odors. Occasional anaerobic condition in the water body as a whole. Depending on the degree of bacterial growth during the period of toxic total mixing of the liquid mass or in the absence of the photosynthesis, fish mortality and the reproduction of the reduced compound from the bottom of the whole liquid mass could occur, leading to a large deterioration in the water quality. The last is a occasional fish mortality. Fish mortality could occur as a result of anaerobiosis, ammonia toxicity under condition of high pH value. So there are when the water is highly acidic, there are chances of the fish mortalities occurred. Ammonia may be present in the significant amounts. It is free from toxic for the fish instead of the iodine form, which is non-toxic. Greater difficulty and increase in the cost of the water treatment. The excessive presence of the algae substantially affect the treatment of water extracted from the lake or a reservoir due to the necessity of the first is the removal of algae. Then sir, the second is a color removal, taste and odor removal, higher consumption of the chemical products, and the more frequent filter back washing. Problem with the industrial water supply. Elevation in the cost of the industrial water supply due to the reason similar to those already mentioned, and also also to the presence of the algae deposition in the cooling water. Water toxicity, impairment of water for human and animal supply because of the presence of toxic secretion from the cyanobacteria, alteration in the quantity and the quality of the commercial fish, reduction in navigation and transport capacity, negative interference in the equipment of the energy generation, and the gradual disappearance of the lake. As a result of eutrophication and the silting, there is an increase in the accumulation of the material and the vegetation, and the lake become progressively shallower until it disappears. This tendency of the disappearance is irreversible, although usually extremely slow. With human interference, the process can accelerate abruptly. In case there is no control in the source of the degrading of the sediments, the water body would disappear relatively quick. So next is the control of liquefaction. That's how to control the liquefaction process in the lake or the reservoir with minimizing the human interference and the silting issue. Preventive measures. Reduction of external sources and the corrective method, the mechanical process, chemical process, and the biological process. So first is the preventive method. So in the preventive method, this compromise the reduction of the phosphorus input to the lake by adding an external source that include the specific strategies related to the wastewater or to the stormwater drainage. So the first is control of wastewater. Wastewater treatment with nutrient removal, sewage diversion to the downstream of the reservoir associated with the conventional wastewater treatment. Exportation of the wastewater to the another catchment area without lake or reservoir, followed by the conventional wastewater treatment and land infiltration of the wastewater. Control of the stormwater drainage, control of the land use and occupation in the catchment area. So, protective green belt among the reservoir and services, construction of the pre-irrigation reservoir upstream of the main reservoir. So this is the kind of a method that is called the preventive method. The next is the mechanical method. So next is the quality standards for the wastewater discharge and water body. This section presents a discussion on the establishment of the quality standards in the perspective of the student. These standards are an important topic in the prevention and the control of the impacts of the discharge of the wastewater. Which are the main issues in this chapter. The impact of the discharge of urban wastewater into the river, lake, estuaries, and the sea is a matter of great concern in the most countries. And important point in this scenario is established of an adequate legislation for the protection of the quality of water resources. This being a crucial point in the environmental and the public health development for all countries. Most developed nations have already surpassed the basic stages of water pollution problems and are currently finding targeting the control of micropollutants, the impact of pollutants in the sensitive areas or the pollution caused by the drainage of groundwater. However, developing nations are under constant pressure from one side observing or attempting to follow the international trends of frequently lowering the limit concentration of the standard, and from the other side is unable to reverse the continuous trend of our environmental degradation. The increase in the sanitary infrastructure can barely cope up with the current population growth in many countries. The implementation of sanitation and the sewage treatment depends largely on the political will and even in the present financial constraints as a final barrier to undermine the necessary steps toward the environmental restoration and the public health maintenance. Time passes as the distance between the desirable and attainable between laws and reality continues to enlarge. Bigger present the comparison between the current status of the developed and the developing countries in terms of the actual equivalent concentration of a particular pollutant and its associated discharge standard. In most developed countries, compile occur for most of the time, and the main concern relates to the occasional episode of the non-compliance, and which most of the current effort is concentrated. However, in most developing nations, the concentration of pollutants discharged into the water body are still very high, and efforts are directed towards reducing the distance to the discharge standard and eventually achieving compliance. And an adequate legislation for the protection of public health and the quality of water resources is an essential tool in the environmental development for all countries. The transfer of written codes from the paper into the real applicable standards, which are used not merely for enforcement but mainly as an integral part of the public health and environmental protection policy, has been challenged for the most countries. Besides the water quality requirements, that represent in the generalized and the conceptual way that desired quality of water, there is a need to establish a quality standard supported by the legal framework. Standards must be applied with through enforcement of the legislation and by entities involved in the discharge and review of the water. The following concepts are more important. National standards are defined by each country have a legal status and are based on the specific condition of the country itself. Depending on the political structure of the country, regional standards will also be developed for each state or other form of political division. Usually, regional standards are at a least equal to the national standards and are often more stringent or complete. Guidelines or recommendations are proposed by the entities of the wide acceptance are generally by nature and usually aim at the protection of the public health and environment in the worldwide terms. Economic, social, and the cultural aspects will be teaching acceptable risks and the technological developments are on a particular each country or region and are better taken into account by the country or region itself. When converting guidelines into the national regional standards, this adoption is crucial and adequate consideration of the guidelines prior to the adoption of the standard may be invaluable tool in the health and environmental development of a country. Whereas inadequate consideration may lead to frustration, unnecessary monetary expenditure, unsustainable system, and other problems. The setting of standards should be based on the sound logical scientific grounds and should be aimed at achieving a major or active benefit or minimizing a given risk for a known cost. In practical terms, there are the following types of the standards or guidelines of direct interest in the topic of the group. First, the discharge quality standard of the receiving water bodies and the standard or quality guidelines for a certain use of the waste, treated wastewater. wastewater treatment level. So there are the three different types of the wastewater treatment. The first is the environmental impact study of the received body treatment objective and the treatment level and the removal efficiency. Wastewater treatment is usually classified according to the following list: preliminary and the primary. So in the preliminary coarse suspended solids are removed, large material at the site. So in the primary settleable suspended solid, particulate BOD and the component of the settleable suspended solid. So in the secondary, particulate BOD organic matter present in the raw sewage or to the non-settleable particular organic matter not removed in the possibly existing soluble BOD. Territory, nutrients, pathogenic organism, non-biodegradable compounds, metals, inorganic dissolved solid, and the remaining suspended solid. The objective of the preliminary treatment is only to removal of the coarse solid, while the primary treatment aims at removing the settleable solid and a part of the organic matter. Physical pollutant removal mechanism are predominant in both levels. In the secondary treatment, the aim is the removal of organic matter and the possibly nutrients by predominantly biological mechanism. The objective of the territory treatment is the removal of specific pollutants or the contemporary removal of the complementary removal of the pollutants that were not sufficiently removed in the secondary treatment. Territory treatment is rare in the developing country. So our last topic is the overview of sludge treatment and the disposal. The main solid byproducts produced in the wastewater treatment are the clean material waste from primary sludge, secondary sludge, and the chemical sludge. The treatment of the solid byproducts generated in the various units is an essential stage in the wastewater treatment. Even though the sludge uses most of its handling fluid is constituted by more than 95% of water, it is only by convention that is called a solid waste with the aim at distinguishing it from the wastewater that is called a solid phase. With the aim in distinguishing it from the wastewater or a liquid owing to the greater volume and the mass generated compared with the other solid. Parallel, the present book covers the problem. First is the production of the sludge in the liquid phase, wastage of the sludge from the liquid phase, and the wastage of the sludge from the solid phase. The sludge production is a function of the wastewater treatment system used for the liquid phase. In the principle, all the biological treatment processes generate the primary sludge, which is composed of the settlement solid of the raw wastewater. In the biological treatment stage, there is a so-called biological sludge or a secondary sludge. This sludge is the biomass that grows and the extent of the food supply by the incoming cells. If the biomass is not removed, it tends to accumulate in the system and eventually lead to the final accident, including its quality in terms of the suspended solid and organic matter, depending on the treatment system. The primary sludge can be sent for the treatment together with the secondary sludge. In this case, the resultant sludge of the mixture is called the secondary sludge. In this case, the resultant sludge of the mixture is called final effluent. Degradation is quality and term of suspended solid and organic matter. Depending on the treatment system, the primary sludge can be sent for the treatment together with the secondary sludge. In this case, The resultant sludge of the mixture is called the mixed sludge. In the treatment system, the incorporate a physical chemical state for improving the performance of the primary or secondary technique test. A chemical sludge is produced. So there is a different types of the sludge treatment stages. First is thickening, the removal of the water, stabilizing, removal of organic matter and volatile solids, conditioning, preparation of a dewatering, dewatering, removal of water, disinfection, removal of pathogenic organism, and the final disposal of the microbes. So this is the total 6 stages of the sludge treatment stages. The first is the thickening, stabilization, conditioning, dewatering, disinfection, and the final disposal. Okay. So here, our definition of the course are completed. If you have any doubt, you can answer question. Kindly drop to me so that we can resolve your doubt